Have you ever pondered the authenticity of Jesus' resurrection? This question has intrigued minds across the globe for centuries, both believers who see it as the cornerstone of their faith and skeptics who question its historical validity find themselves drawn to this topic. It's a question that transcends religious, cultural, and intellectual boundaries. It's more than just a matter of faith or history. It's a profound inquiry into the very nature of life and death. Today we're going to tackle this age-old question head-on. Our aim is not to preach or to convince, but to present the evidence that supports the claim of Jesus' resurrection. To explore, to question, and to understand, that's our goal. So whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or someone simply intrigued by the mysteries of history, this journey is for you. Now let's dive into the evidence supporting Jesus' resurrection. The first piece of evidence comes from historical accounts. Let's start with Christian sources. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all account for the empty tomb and Jesus' appearances after the crucifixion. These accounts, although written by followers of Jesus, consistently recount the series of events leading up to and following his resurrection. The Gospel of John, for instance, paints a vivid picture of Mary Magdalene's encounter with the risen Jesus, an account echoed in the other Gospels. Now, it's not just the Christian sources that speak of these events. We also have support from non-Christian historians. Take Tacitus, a Roman historian from the 1st century. He wasn't a follower of Jesus, yet he wrote about the crucifixion of Jesus under Pontius Pilate and the subsequent growth of the Christian movement. His writings, although not directly mentioning the resurrection, affirm the existence of Jesus and the rapid spread of his teachings after his death. In addition to Roman historians, Jewish texts like the Talmud also reference Jesus. The Talmud is a compilation of Jewish law and tradition written over several centuries. It contains passages referring to Jesus, his execution, and the claim of his disciples that he had risen from the dead. Although these texts approach Jesus skeptically, they nevertheless provide external validation of the events surrounding his life, death, and purported resurrection. So we have a convergence of accounts from different sources and perspectives, all pointing to the same sequence of events: the crucifixion, the empty tomb, and the post-crucifixion appearances of Jesus. This convergence is significant, as it reduces the likelihood of these accounts being fabricated or exaggerated. Historical accounts, like any piece of evidence, must be scrutinized, analyzed, and weighed against other pieces of evidence. But when we look at the consistency and convergence of these accounts, they provide a compelling case for the historical reality of Jesus' resurrection. These accounts provide a solid foundation for the claim of Jesus' resurrection. A second compelling evidence lies in the transformation of Jesus' disciples. Let's take a moment and step back in time. Imagine the scene. Jesus, the man these disciples had followed, learned from, and built their lives around, was suddenly and violently taken from them. They watched as he was crucified, died, and was buried. The followers of Jesus were left leaderless and in fear for their lives. They hid, terrified of the same fate befalling them. But something happened, something so profound, it utterly transformed these frightened men into fearless advocates. The disciples, once cowering in fear, emerged from their hiding places and began to proclaim loudly and publicly that Jesus had risen from the dead. They spoke with such conviction, such certainty, that people listened, and not just a few people, thousands. Now let's consider this. Would these men risk their lives, face persecution, even death, for a lie? It's easy to die for a cause you believe in, but to die for a deception? That's a much harder sell. Yet that's exactly what happened. Nearly all the disciples met violent ends, martyred for their unwavering belief in the resurrection of Jesus. Peter, for example, was crucified upside down. James was beheaded. Thomas was speared. These were not the actions of men who were perpetuating a hoax. These were the actions of men who had seen something so extraordinary, so life-altering, they could not keep silent. And it wasn't just the original disciples. Saul of Tarsus, a zealous persecutor of Christians, was so dramatically transformed after an encounter with the risen Jesus, he became Paul, one of Christianity's most influential apostles. This sudden shift, this radical transformation, is difficult to explain without the resurrection. Skeptics might argue that the disciples lied or were hallucinating, but mass hallucinations are extremely rare. And as for the lie theory, well, people might lie to gain something. But what did the disciples gain? Not wealth, not power. They gained hardship, persecution, and death. The dramatic transformation of the disciples strongly supports the claim of Jesus' resurrection. Lastly, the impact of Jesus' resurrection cannot be overlooked in explaining the growth of Christianity. The resurrection of Jesus is not just a cornerstone of Christian faith, but also served as a powerful catalyst that spurred the swift expansion of Christianity across continents. After Jesus' resurrection, the early followers of his teachings, who were once scattered and fearful, found renewed courage and conviction. This resurrection narrative deeply resonated with them, fueling their fervor to spread the message of Jesus far and wide. From a small band of followers, Christianity began to grow, its roots reaching out to different corners of the known world. More than just a miraculous event, the resurrection of Jesus was a beacon of hope and redemption for many. It represented victory over death and offered a promise of eternal life. Concepts that were deeply appealing and transformative. This central belief in resurrection served as the driving force, propelling the spread of Christianity. In the span of a few centuries, Christianity transformed from a persecuted sect to a leading religion, adopted by the Roman Empire itself. This growth was not simply a matter of numbers. It was a profound shift in societal belief systems, shaped significantly by the resurrection narrative. The swift and wide-reaching spread of Christianity is a testament to the impact of Jesus' resurrection. So, what can we conclude from these pieces of evidence? Historical accounts, both Christian and non-Christian, corroborate an empty tomb and post-crucifixion sightings of Jesus. The disciples' transformation from fear-stricken to bold proclaimers of his resurrection is a telling testament. And let's not forget the undeniable influence of Jesus' resurrection on the exponential growth of Christianity. While the question of Jesus' resurrection may still spark debates, the evidence supporting it is compelling and worth considering.
We are constantly making new content to help you on your walk of faith. Please like and subscribe to make sure you stay up to date with the latest content.